Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Junia Doan's The Spark. I'm Junia Doan, and thank you for joining us. My guest today is Jeanne Lound Schaller, creator of Catherine's House and author of Desert in My Backyard, One Woman's Journey into Silence. Welcome, Jeanne. Well, as you know, I have an interest in your almost original idea of Catherine House. How did that come to be?
Well, when I was in college in Grand Rapids, our pastor took us up, a bunch of students up to North Ontario, Canada, for spring. Well, it was February, actually. We headed up north in February. And we went to Catherine House. And that was my exposure to the prayer house that we have built years after that.
So she inspired you, and you particularly liked her choice of words, Pustina. Do I say it correctly?
Pustinia, it's the Russian
Pustinia.
word, yes, for that whole sense of being able to be there, have somebody listen to you, and that kind of a thing in terms of spiritual journeys. Space to be by yourself with God. And in Russia, they had somebody who would be sitting there when you came. But we developed it as an open space that people could just come and be there without having somebody else there.
And you use that every day?
I don't use it every day, but I've used it a lot. We built it there in 1981. So it's 39 years now. And I have made about 40 retreats over the years. I've gone other times for just short visits, but I've done about 40 retreats. And a couple times I spent 7 days or 5 days there. Now I spend a little bit of time as I've gotten older.
Older, and you did further along in the journey, perhaps.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's been a good journey to have that in that space on our land, and the many people who have come to spend time there also.
When did you notice in your life that you had a spiritual yen and were seeking more of an inside understanding, silence, as you and others call it?
Well, I noticed that when I went up there, I was 20 years old, and I noticed that whole spiritual thing of being quietly with God in a little space like that. I'd never been introduced to that. And so that was when I thought, one of these days I would like to be able to have one nearby. And it was my husband, George, he went with me up there too, the students. And so then later we got married and we lived in town. But when we moved out of town, out in the Boat Creek area, 10 acres. And then we thought, we would like to create that there, which we did then back in 81. So that hunger for building my spiritual life was there from when I was 20. So it was interesting to see it unfold.
You became a spiritual director. But also you received direction earlier on. It strikes me that you are a seeker because of your willingness, your courage to seek what you needed to hear, that maybe you didn't exactly experience, didn't come forward. As sometimes you said, you walk in order to understand yourself or to hear yourself. And I like that aspect of seeking. And you read a number of books. And how did you find out who recommended these books?
Oh, I think just different friends that I've had. They were older than myself, and I was a part of a prayer group for years. And Marge Darger, Helen Casey, Ronnie McGuire, that were close friends of mine, and I could look to them for what I needed to, uh, how I needed to grow. And when you talk about the thing of waiting and till I listen to what I need to hear, that's a good way to put it, because I believe we all need to hear certain things, and we get busy, and I've always been a busy person too. So it was a blessing to have that space to go to read those books, and then to move along into my own journey.
Well, for reading your book, I actually want to mention a couple of concepts from a couple of books. One is the concept of the first half of your life, you build your container, who you are, who you marry, your education, your job, your children, your interest. And the second half of your life, in essence, you examine what's there, what's needed to be added to, and maybe taken out.
Well, and that came at a time, as I included in my book, which is called Desert in My Backyard, One Woman's Journey into Silence. So we live in this, when we moved into that land, it was almost completely open, and now it is almost completely wooded. And so just that sense of it's still a desert, that beauty back there, and beauty in Mother Nature.
In one of your prayers, you brought in other people. You had the concept of bringing in other people to your journey in a prayerful way. But with that, or also, is the concept of gratitude to many mothers. And you would specify, and I thought the audience might be interested in the process and how you selected.
It was interesting because our son, who's our oldest son, we have 4 children, and in January of that year, 2018, I was getting nudges about getting other mothers. And my mother was no longer living, and I was very close to her. But the nudging came for that, and I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But by April of that year, our son had surgery in the brain. And then it came clear to me. And that was when I knew, before that, I had been sitting in the house and doing my prayer and listening to that. At that time, then I knew I needed to go out and walk in the mornings. And I did that. Sometimes I was at 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock. I just knew I needed to do that. And so then, with all of that going on, that whole sense of I needed a number of different mothers to support me, and that I'm sure I would continue to learn from. And so at first there were 5, and then eventually, and one of those mothers, of course, was my mother, and one was my mother's mother. And so then I ended up having 7. And the latest one was when a dear friend, Jean Selby in Midland, also. And I knew at that point, there were other people that I knew and I appreciated and respected, but they didn't come in line, but she did. So now she's a part of it too. And it's just a wonderful thing to think about. They're there helping me in ways that I don't even always know, but I appreciate it very much.
It's an interesting concept I'm going to review for myself, because I have had the experience where in sort of tough times, my grandmother's presence will make itself known, her strength, her ability to handle things and be a flirt, but her ability to maintain some hard blows and go through them successfully or go with them successfully. But I like the idea of calling them reinforcements, as it were, because we all have aspects. And I think when we meet people, we share some aspect of ourselves, but not necessarily everything. it's not deception. It's just we are connected that way, and maybe a few more ways. But other people have other connections with us, so it allows at least me to feel myself more fully as I rotate, through these other connections. You talk about yourself as being a not driven. What was the word you used? But anyway, strong person. And everything you've done, which has been a lot, and we'll go there, has that sense of both invitation, both a sense of the next step, but also a fierce desire, maybe fierce, to see it through well, to train yourself, constant learning, and to see it through well. A while back, you got interested with some others in bringing peace to the world. Could you tell us a little something about how you came to that and what it was?
Well, back in 2000, and actually it was Marge Darger who helped me getting started with that, was the International Council for Peace and Justice in the World. Going by the a decade for that, about how to help build a better world for children that the UN had worked with. And so we had a local organization for 10 years, and we went to the Midland Daily News, and Jack was very, very good. He had lots of articles for us so we could help spread the word. We had people from different races, different faith communities or not faith communities. And that was very, very important to work together with people as we stepped into that new time in life, the 200,000, that whole stepping ahead and what we could do. And there are other things I've gotten involved with in terms of peace over the years.
I've thought a lot about peace and, or asked myself a lot of questions about peace. And I think in our society, you have to have inner peace before you can have outer peace. Although a friend of mine's husband is a retired psychiatrist, and he believes if he got 1 million signatures of people wanting to live in peace or promoting peace, the world would be peaceful. Have you run across other approaches to peace, or do you like that conflict resolution style which you studied and used in the court?
Right, the conflict resolution in terms of I was a mediator for several years, and just recently then I was teaching that conflict resolution and mediation to students at Windover School, because I love working with young people, and this is I loved working with the adults. But working with young people is very, very good. And I think the thing of that we all learn, even as adults, as you know, that we don't just figure it out right away. It's a lifelong thing for us too. And for me, recognizing more and more that the younger they are, and children, I worked in 2 other middle schools, in Midland schools, teaching circles, and understand how much these students want to learn new ways to be peaceful themselves and to help other people too.
Do you think other cultures have that same value system that values peace?
I think that a lot of cultures do. With what they're talking with restorative practices in education now, what is being done in schools, that isn't just in the United States, that's being done. So in New Zealand, there were people who started with their students years and years ago about how do you work things out. It isn't just the United States has started it. But again, it's wonderful that they are. And to recognize that children all over the world and adults all over the world need help to learn conflict resolution. So it's great that
my question to myself, Jeanne, was, is it the values of the culture, or is it innate desire for freedom or peaceful relationship? I don't know the answer, but you see the opposite. What is your thought?
I don't know the answer to that either, but when I just hear more and more about people who want to have a better world, and I think partly it's because we are seeing so many people all over the world day after day, whether they're refugees, and you see the children suffering, and you think, oh, we've all got to work together to make a better world. And it's not like we have to take it all on ourselves. I'm only doing a little bit that I can do. And that's what I am pretty much satisfied with. If I can do my part, I don't have to take on somebody else's. So little by little, we can each add more. And I think a lot of people are doing
My late husband, Ted, taught me not to be so judgmental. And what I mean is, shortly after we were married, I was driving down I-75. I was driving, and he was one of these pretty heavy traffic. All of a sudden, this guy jumps in front of me. I didn't have that much room between me and the car head, didn't use his signal. And I turned his head and I said, did you see that? Did you see that? And Ted said something that changed my life, my attitude towards people, actually, and my judgment attitude towards people. He said gently, Junia, cut them some slack.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's taught in conflict resolution, but sometimes we do not see the whole problem. This person may have been late to work, had to go to the bathroom, had a sick wife. You can't know. And you just have to develop that sense of generosity, and that
Yes.
people do things maybe they wouldn't do under other circumstance in their lives.
Yes, yes. And I think that when you when I deal with circles in the classroom and students listen to others' stories, and there's always a teacher there too, so another adult besides myself, when they hear other stories, that helps them to have more empathy in their life and more understanding maybe about their own struggles. And so I think, again, if we can learn that when we're young, when I grew up, one of the phrases was, if somebody hits you, you hit them back harder. And I think we have learned in many, many levels that that does not work anymore, internationally or personally. And so when students can learn things and when schools support that happening, and the students can see that teachers are learning as well as they are learning, it's good for us all, no matter how old we are. Huh?
I read so much about bullying being an increasingly difficult problem in schools. How does the program you're talking about, well, is it applied to that situation? Does it fail that situation? Do we need to think of it differently? Because we had not only the physical encounters, but we have the online encounters. It puzzles me. Anything you could say, I'd be most eager to hear.
Well, one of the things we've worked with kids in schools, and we've also worked in Bullet Creek Middle School. We've worked, this is our team that we've worked with from our Nonviolent Peace Force Midland chapter, huh? Worked in Meridian Elementary. And so one of the things we worked in Freeland Elementary. One of the things we worked with them and taught them was when bullies come in and treat you in certain ways, that you can either be an upstander or a bystander. And so many people have been bystanders because of fear, maybe of getting involved or not knowing how to get involved. But if you can be an upstander and you're not attacking that person, and some of the things we have heard kids say then in fourth grade, that when we say about if somebody bullies you, what do you have to do? How do you deal with that? We've heard more than one student say that they are bullying maybe because either at home or in school or somewhere else, they were bullied. So they're not just saying, a few years ago, they might say, oh, we'd say, would you have a bully in with you in your work, a project? When you were in your schoolroom, the teacher would be there. They would say no because bullies are bad people. But then later on, over the years, they would say, that yes, they have done some, yes, I would include them because they have been mistreated. So a whole different sense at a young age of not being judgmental and seeing what they might be able to do. So that again is, if we learn that from kindergarten on up, and we know how smart kindergarten kids are now today, that that is a whole process.
But specifically, what advice would you give to a parent of a young child under a couple of different conditions? In school, someone raises their hand to hit this person. What do you say if you're that person or you're the bystander who wants to be the upstander?
Mhm. Well, one of the things would be, of course, is to not respond to that person, but also to let, if you're in the schoolroom, let a teacher know. Don't don't keep your mouth shut and find out the help, or let your parents know. So it isn't something that you just have to do, but if you don't do something, that can continue. And then the fear that kids have because of maybe just one person who is mistreated.
Talk about your Peace Fellow, your Rotary Peace Fellow. That was an interesting experience. But I'm looking for one more comment on or suggestion from you on bullying if it comes over social media. If someone slams you or says things about you, have you any sort of comment that they can do or say or cause to happen?
Well, one of the things I would say is to don't respond to them. Uh, let go of those kind of issues if it's something you can say, I don't have to let that person come in and talk to me or send a message to me. So that's one way. I haven't talked with high school kids a great deal about that, so I wouldn't have a lot of information for them. But I know there's all kinds of books that kids are able to read, adults that they've created new ones about how do you deal with your stress? How do you deal with bullying? How do you deal with all kinds of things that you will need help with? And who can you go to get the help with?
What did you learn about being abroad as a Peace Fellow for Rotary?
Well, first of all, it was wonderful. I had no idea. I think I've said in my book about when I was in high school, I wanted to be a cheerleader, and my mother said, "You cannot be a cheerleader because those skirts are too short." So I never had that opportunity. So then when I turned 68, there I was in Thailand and it was Ruby Iwamasa who invited me because she knew I'd known her for years and she knew the work efforts that I was involved with. So she said, why don't you apply? Which I did. And there I went. It was wonderful to have that. When I was younger, I think when I was in high school, I thought, oh, I'd like to go to the U of N and I could connect with people there from all over the world. And but that didn't unfold either. But then to be there at that time and to get to know people, and I still connect. There were 18 of us from different countries, and I still connect. When their birthdays are, I will send an email to all of the whole group, and I don't hear back from all of them, but I hear back from a number. So just know I have those connections personally with people around the world. It connects me more to the world.
Thank you so much, Jeanne. I need to wrap up for a moment here. So we've learned a lot. Jeanne was a spiritual person from very early days. She says from her 20s, 20 in specific. But she managed to get married and have children and raise the children and be through illness of her son and this and that, but always with her partner, her husband, who was so good at this, of supporting her and she him in their desire for inner peace and for peaceful surroundings, their gift to the community, you might say. And for herself, she put a lot of work into it. She put in retreats besides Catherine House. She built Catherine House with friends and her husband and the help of the neighbor. She read endless books. She took notes, and she wrote a journal since, well, decades really. And in going over the journal, she edited it out. She decided to talk about her journey rather than just the farm or the meeting the children and her day-to-day life supporting them. So I would advise you to think of her as, in a sense, one of your mothers, if you go in that direction, because in her life, she has had the courage to go into the new, even when she didn't know the new. She waited, in her case, for God to reveal it, and then she get the next step or the next part of her life. Clarissa Estes talks about different times in your life and different responsibilities that you have. And I think that she respects her position or her role now as both an inspiration, a childlike wonder, and the ability to help balance out others when they go through their journey. Thank you, and please tune in next week. I'd be so happy if you did. Be kind to everyone this week.
To contact Junia, send her an email at juniadownsthespark@gmail.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadownthespark.com. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Junia Doan's The Spark.
Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.